Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is Joe and today we're going to be looking at the best Brighton attackers. Now, Brighton are my team. I've been supporting them for a long time. I'm of an age, so I can remember 1983 when Brighton were in the FA Cup final and tragically lost the replay to Manchester United. But I still remember that. I still remember the big blue sponge hands being waved around at the school playground in anticipation of our victory in the FA Cup, which never arose. But nevertheless, so I've been watching them at the Goldstone, the Withdean, and I've seen them at the Amex as well. I'm sort of the reverse plastic fan. I actually left Brighton to move to Somerset. Just as they were getting their shiny new stadium at the Amex. And of course, from that, they've gone on to cement themselves as a Premier League side in recent years. But yes, those initial days. So yeah, I've seen them play the likes of Mansfield and Rotherham when we ground shared with Gillingham at the Priestfield Stadium. But anyway, so that's where I come from it. So each match with Brighton, I'm constantly amazed and astounded that we can beat major sides, that we can play startling, attractive football. And of course, that is why there's a lot of interest in FPL amongst the Brighton attackers. So that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at the Fantasy Premier League. We're looking at the best Brighton attackers going ahead to the 23-24 season. Brighton are in Europa League. They did so well. They were qualified straight out for the Europa League. So they're going to have rotation, and that's something we'll address in this video. But also, they've managed to attract better players as well. So they've got Pedro coming in. They've got an old warhorse of the Premier League in James Milner, who might not get the minutes, but he's certainly going to be an influence in the dressing room, just like his former Liverpool colleague Adam Lallana has been in recent years at Brighton. Of course, Brighton, some of the stats we're going to use look at the season as a whole. That includes 9 games under Graham Potter, who then moved to Chelsea with less than credible success. I'm not in any way delighted by that. He did a fine job at Brighton, and I do wish him well wherever he goes next. But De Zerbi took over, Roberto De Zerbi, and he built on what Potter had achieved and more. And he improved every player. I think pretty much every attacking player improved, whether that be Solly March on the wing, Matoma getting his chance because Trossard moved on to Arsenal, and then of course you've got Ferguson and Welbeck. I remember a particular game I went to last season, Brighton against Liverpool, where Brighton comprehensively outplayed Liverpool, and Welbeck suddenly turned into Pele before my eyes, and it was astounding. It was one of the best games I'd certainly seen in Brighton, but a lot of other season ticket holders there were saying that it was also one of their best games seen. So what we do is we'll look at some season stats, but we're also going to look at, crucially, from when De Zerbi took over in Gameweek 10, which was a 1-0 defeat to Spurs, but nevertheless, it does show how it's got a more realistic picture of what we can expect from Brighton attackers. They've got Pedro in from Watford. That could change things up a bit, and they are no longer with McAllister, so that leaves a gap for the number 10 role, so it could be in Ciso. There's a whole bunch of players that we're interested in. So what we'll do is, first of all, we'll have a look at the fixtures, because one of the reasons, not just because of last season's attacking stats, but the fixtures are pretty kind early on for Brighton. I mean, it couldn't get kinder. A home game against a promoted side in Luton. That's fantastic. So I certainly want a piece of that in terms of their attacking threat. Then they've got Wolves away and West Ham at home. The two sides have come a long way since a game I saw in the early days of the Amex in the Championship, Brighton against West Ham, and West Ham won 1-0, and I think Kevin Nolan scored. So I remember a lot of bubbles, a lot of cheers from West Ham, very annoying. But it was both West Ham have conquered a bit of Europe with the European Cup, and Brighton are now in Europe alongside them in the Europa League. So this is how times have changed. But nevertheless, got them there. But then the fixtures turn a bit. Then we got Newcastle at home. Might get something from that. Manchester United away. Pascal Gross has a phenomenal record against Manchester United. Their goal is like a magnet for his the steel ball that comes from his foot. Then we got Bournemouth after that at home, so that's another great fixture. And then Villa away, that's a bit tougher. And then Liverpool at home. Well, judging by last season, it's not tough, but I think it could be a bit tougher this time around, especially because Alex McAllister is in there. Brighton's former midfielder, former penalty taker, is now cemented in the Liverpool midfield. Well, we think he will be by then, hopefully. So that's why we're interested in them. Great season, great fixtures. Looking at the season as a whole, just to put some stats into context, in terms of goals scored, they were fourth out of every other Premier League team, which is incredible, with 72 goals scored. I believe Manchester United got about 58. Shots, 613. That's first. That's first. I'm going to whisper that. It's first. I cannot believe it. Shots in the box, 409. That's fourth best. Shots on target. It's first again. I can't believe it. Third, big chances, 116. Expected goals, they had the second best rate for expected goals. And non-penalty expected goals, second again. This is... my mind's being blown as a Brighton fan of a number of years. That is quite something. There was a managerial change, as I mentioned. De Zerbi came in, and also it's worth noting this is from an article on Fantasy Football Scout, so do have a look at that. It's about Brighton in general. It says post World Cup they actually ranked as high as second for minutes per expected goal, only behind Manchester City, which is pretty good. So Brighton are only one of 6 sides to have 4 home fixtures in the first 6 game weeks, as we mentioned earlier with those fixtures. For very kind fixtures, and they averaged 5.2 minutes per shot at the Amex last term, a faster rate than any Premier League side in home encounters except for Arsenal. As this article says on Fantasy Football Scout, their attackers will be in demand when FPL launches for the new season. Well, it's already launched, so this came out just before it launched, so already launched, and Matoma is getting on for, well, at the time of recording, I think he's around 50% ownership. He's very popular, very exciting winger. He's actually got not a doctorate, but his degree is in dribbling for some kind of, I presume it's got a more technical sports science title, but essentially he did his dissertation on dribbling for his degree at a Japanese university, and it's showing off. He's quite something to see. You don't know where he's going to go. Will he go down to the byline? Will he cut inside? Will he unleash an assist? Will he unleash a goal? You don't know, and that's the thing. Opposition defences don't know. It did drop off towards the end of the season, but fatigue was dropping in. A lot of Brighton's matches at the end of last season was very congested. There was a lot of cancellations. There was a train strike which had to cancel the Brighton and Crystal Palace derby game. That was cancelled. Obviously the Queen's funeral as well, like many others, and then also just double games. It's just doing so well last season was also meant they did well in the cups, so a lot of those games had to be postponed. So towards the end of the season there was a lot of double game weeks, and there was a lot of rotation, which was quite frustrating. So that may be an indicator of how it's going to plan out next season with Europa League, and there'll be rotation as well, because presumably you're going to want to do well in that. This is the first time. This isn't a situation like Aston Villa where it's a return to Europe. This is it. This is the first time they've been in Europe. They're not just going to just put out some kids, although the kids are pretty good, so they may as well. But no, they're going to put in some strong teams for that. So we might see rotation in the league. What I'll do now is I'll have a look at some stats of some key players. And what I've done is the table I'm about to put up is game week 10, which was De Zerbi's first match, that defeat against Spurs, through to game week 38. So, and I've sorted it by minutes per expected goal involvement. So this will give when they're on the pitch, who are the most expected to be involved in goals and assists? Well, obviously, everyone's going to look at this and say Undav. But when I was preparing some tables for the Scoutcast last year, and goals imminent as well. Undav was frequently top of these when you were looking at Brighton players. In fact, when you were looking at any attacking player for a while. But as you can see, Undav has only got 6 starts. So he's very much not nailed on. 5 goals, 2 assists. So in that limited timescale, his minutes per expected goal involvement was 118 minutes. Bearing in mind, Erling Haaland's is about 82. So is a distance from Haaland, but not too far off, especially for his price. So a bit more nailed on is Welbeck with 15 starts across that period, that game week 10 to game week 38 period. 6 goals in the De Zerbi reign, 1 assist, minutes per expected goal involvement every 152 minutes. We're starting to get towards every a goal, a goal every 2 matches territory with these. And Ciso, he emerged quite spectacularly. Particularly with his goals. I remember and I'm sure many people will, the goal he scored against Manchester City at the Amex towards the end of the season. It was from distance. It was straight and very hard at the goal, and it was so good that the Man City fans were seen applauding it as it was going in, which is quite something. That's not the first time that Man City fans or players have applauded a Brighton player, which is very nice of them. But I remember Sergio Aguero doing the same when we had Dan Burn. Dan Burn nicked the ball off him and bypassed him, and Aguero gave him a round of applause because it was quite some skill. Dan Burn now at Newcastle, so a bit of a memory for us there. So in Ciso, 3 assists, 4 goals across his 7 starts, minutes per expected goal involvement every 158 minutes. So as I said, getting on for every goal every couple of games. If he was to start every game, will he start every game? That's something here. I will say that after we've gone through this list of players, some of their stats, I've got some comparison tool heat maps to show you, which shows you where they play. And so that gives an indication of the sorts of players they are, and the sorts of players you can expect to get when you invest in FPL. So Ferguson, by many reckoning, the best of our attackers, young, Ireland international, 2 assists, 6 goals across 10 starts. He was used as a sub a lot. What tended to happen was Welbeck would start the matches and get subbed off around 60, 70 minutes with Ferguson coming in, or Undav, but Ferguson in 10 times. Ferguson starting 10 times, but then also coming in. Minutes per expected goal involvement every 164 minutes. I mean, he's a striker in the game, 6 million. If he is a regular starter, which I don't know if he is looking at this list, because we do have options up front. But if he is a great option, because he certainly passes the eye test as well. As we'll see from his heat map, he not only is great in and around the penalty box, but he links up play well. He's very very clued up. And some people have compared him to Harry Kane in the way that Harry Kane plays. He's a threat in the box, but also can move back and is a great team player, wedding the attack together there. So next up is Matoma. Now Matoma is the most popular. Anyone who's seen Brighton games will probably just think, I'm going to get Matoma in. Because he just looks a bit different. He looks a bit more exciting. He certainly passes the eye test, and he certainly delivers as well. But he's not. I mean, minutes per expected goal involvement have 180 minutes, so he really is a goal involvement every couple of matches, which is quite good. I think I actually only owned him last season for the last part of the season. I only really got a couple of assists, maybe a goal from him. But he nevertheless, between that in that De Zerbi period of game weeks 10 to 38, he's had 7 goals, 8 assists. So a real spread of returns there. Midfielder, so he's going to get bonus as well if he's going to rack up those returns. And 24 starts. Pretty similar here. Now March doesn't pass the eye test as well as Matoma, but I mean he was certainly. I mean, that Liverpool game I went to. He scored a brace. He looks great, and he dominates the right wing. He's been a real fan favourite for ages. He's played sort of as a support striker, attacking midfielder, winger, wing back, and as we'll see, he has linked up with Pascal Gross quite well on the wing when Pascal Gross has been a right wing back or right back, and so they sort of interchange their roles there. He's used to that. So 24 starts, so he's as nailed as Matoma. 192 minutes per expected goal involvement, just behind Matoma, but not far off. 7 goals, 7 assists. So very similar goal involvement there, the actual goals and assists. Next up, just behind them, and quite a drop really, a minutes per expected goal involvement every 244 minutes. So divide that by 9, and you've got returns are rare, but that's because in open play they're going to be rare. Gross is a very versatile player, can play pretty much anywhere across the midfield, pretty much anywhere, to be honest. He can be used really up top. He can be used as a defender on the wing, as a wing back, full back. As I said, he has certain a great track record against Manchester United. 6 assists, 6 goals from Gameweek 10 to 38 under the De Zerbi era. 30 starts, that is huge. So whenever that rotation kicked in, during that period, he's done exceptionally well there. So he's pretty much started every match there. So minutes per expected goal involvement, is every 244 minutes. Estupiñán, 6 assists and a goal, 28 starts under the De Zerbi era. Minutes per expected goal involvement over 515. So he's obviously a defender, but I've mentioned him because he has that assist threat. So if you're looking for that, getting that attack, you're going to get that from Estupiñán. So I do like him a lot there, and I can see why he is so popular there. I'm just looking at the prices as well. So Undav's 5.5, Welbeck is 6, and Ciso 5.5. Ferguson is 6, Matoma 6.5, Gross, Matoma, March and Gross all 6.5. So if you're looking to make some savings, and if it's starting to look either in pre-season or it's starting to look as the season's going on, then Ciso is starting and offering great value. You can save yourself $1 million by going for him. I think that's pretty good there for those players. I'm just going to make, just while I'm talking here, because I'm just basically seeing if there's any more information in the original table that I've got up. No, I think that's fine there in terms of the assists and the goals. But yeah, I just wanted to double check that I wasn't leaving any stats out there. So you can see there's a lot of choice, and that's quite important for us if we want to save a bit of money. So what I've done is I've had a look at some players. I've used the comparison tool, so I haven't really compared the stats. I just wanted to show you where these players play, because currently the sort of the De Zerbi non-rotation type team would have Welbeck up front, who would come off at 60 or 70 minutes, replaced by Ferguson. Sometimes Ferguson would start. Matoma on the left, March on the right. In the number 10 role, started off being Lallana, then got injured. So he could come back. And people are forgetting about Lallana, but De Zerbi really rated him. Pascal Gross can play there, and McAllister played there a lot as well. But McAllister can also play a bit further back. As Liverpool fans will discover, he's pretty much he's a very versatile midfielder. And then Ciso comes in, looking in a more attacking role. He can play pretty much anywhere in an attacking role there. So these are the players you've got there. But now we've got Pedro coming in. As I said, Lallana back from injury, presume. So you've got lots and lots of options in those attacking roles as well. So I think that there is a lot of choice there. And so pre-season is going to be important. But yeah, anyway, let's have a look at some of these heat maps. So what I've got up here is Matoma and then Ciso. So this is the sorts of players they were. This is, once again, I've done it from Game Week 10 to Game Week 38. So to be honest, Matoma's, whenever he got his chance in the Potter era, is broadly similar to this anyway. But both these players got their chances under De Zerbi. Matoma Look at that. That's the left wing. So those listening to this, it's a massive, big red blob all across the attacking side of the pitch. On the left-hand side, and that is where Matoma's heart is. And you can almost see in this, so I'll describe this for those listening on the podcast, you can almost see the red of the moving inwards towards goal, and so he's moving away from the corner flag, moving towards that goal. So at that stage there, opposition defenders are not quite sure whether he's going to cross, pass, or shoot even. Now, I have seen him move past the player and then shoot. And when you think, oh well, another player might have passed that or crossed that, but he will go for that shot. I mean, he's not a striker, but he can score, as we've seen with the stats. So that's his territory, and that's where he was going to prosper. So if he's up against a poor right back or poor defence or a slow defence, that's not very quick to react, that's when Matoma's going to really shine there. So that's something to look out for. In CISO, look at this, completely different. So for those listening on the podcast, these are little blobs of red all around the edge of the penalty area. So he is inhabiting really an attacking midfield, a number 10 position. He is not over on that left or that right, although he can, he has filled in for March and Matoma. He can play all of there, and they said there's little green blobs over on the left and the right side, but it's mainly in the centre, and that's where you want him to play, and that's where he's been shooting as well, and that's where the red blob is, just outside of the penalty box. That is where he really shone for that goal I was describing against Man City. So these are two options here, and the reason I put these two together is because Matoma's by far the most popular pick, 6.5. But I'm constantly getting messages as a Brighton fan, and I'm sure other Brighton fans who play FPL are getting the same as well, is Enciso nailed on? Will Enciso play? And so what I'm doing is comparing them, because I think if Enciso does start playing, does perform, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of Matoma down to Enciso. Because why would you pay 6.5 million for a good attacking asset when you can get a good attacking asset for 5.5 and not really miss out on points? In fact, you might even get more points. So I put those together there. Next up, I've got Pascal Gross and Solly March. Not as popular, but there's still interest. Pascal Gross, before I describe the heat map for those listening on the podcast, Pascal Gross was on penalties before McAllister cemented his side in the team. And he took over penalties, but it was Pascal Gross there. He had a very good record. He is on set pieces. One thing this heat map does show, he takes corners. So he can be on free kicks, corners, and those penalties as well. So if you think they're going to get penalties, and if you've got a player like Matoma coming into the box, one thing that frequently happened last season was Matoma assist, McAllister goal from that penalty. We might be seeing Matoma assist, Gross goal. So I'll describe Gross's heat map for a look at March, because they're both on the right-hand side predominantly. So Pascal Gross plays right back, right wing back, right midfield, takes corners and gets into attacking roles. So his red blob of heat on the pitch is it's pretty much the whole of that right-hand side except the penalty boxes. So he's not in the penalty box. He's the guy who's going to be assisting. So he can score, but those are going to be slightly longer range than other players there. But so he's got that open play potential, but it's those set pieces. So what we're going to be looking out for in pre-season is who's on penalties. My assumption is it's Pascal Gross. De Zerbi's comments in the local press, national press, he really likes Pascal Gross, like really likes him. He signed a new contract, and he very much respects him, and he thinks he's a really good player. So it's not like Pascal Gross is going to be dropped. I'd be very surprised. Same with Solly March. Really impressed with Solly March. Solly March has really improved under De Zerbi just as a player, and I think that's something that to to bear in mind is that the manager really rates these guys. And he's also spoken really highly of Matoma. He has also spoken about Matoma's need to rest and questioned his ability to start 2 matches in a week. But there was evidence as he started to start 2 matches in a week that he was actually achieving that. So anyway, Pascal Gross, huge sea of red down that right, dominating in defence and attack. A lot of assist potential and defensive duties. March is a smaller version of that, really, much more concentrated. His heat is much more concentrated down that right wing. And so you can see what he's doing there. He's coming down that right wing. He's peppering crosses in. That is his role. And he's using that to come into the box and score, but not as much as Matoma was. So Matoma has got heightened goal threat there. But nevertheless, March, you can see is the little red blob on this heat map is also within defence as well. So he is moving back. And what you often saw was Gross and March sort of replacing each other. So if Gross was coming forward, March would go back to shore up that defence on that wing there. They work together really well, which was good to see. But further muddies the water because it's 2 more options for us. And I've got more as well. So here's another. Ferguson, who I mentioned, and his heat map from last season, game weeks 10 to 38, it's the Zerbi era only. His heat map, it's very Harry Kane. So he's got little red blobs of heat around the penalty box, then just outside, and then further into the centre circle as well. It's obviously probably involved a kickoff as well, but more showing that he's not afraid to go back to link up play if needed. So he's a pretty good all-round attacker, really. A great asset. Do if you get a chance, do have a look at some of his performances at Brighton, some clips on YouTube, whatever, and you'll see he is really good. In pre-season, we're really going to want to know how he's doing there and who he's going to play. Is he going to replace Welbeck? I mean, Welbeck's getting on, but Welbeck jumped up a gear. Welbeck, while being a year older last season than the previous season, was markedly a better player, and he did come into the season pretty fit, actually. So he looked like, I mean, he was very, very good as a player, much fitter than he'd been. It wasn't the usual injured Welbeck. He just seemed faster, a bit more sharper. And I think that may continue. I mean, Welbeck will be hard to dislodge, but if anyone can, I guess it'll be Ferguson who'll get those minutes. So I've got Pedro next. Now, Pedro hasn't played yet for Brighton, so probably wondering why I've got this heat map. So I've raided the 2021 season, or rather his last season at Watford. I think it was 21, but his last season with Watford in the Premier League. So this is where he played for Watford in the Premier League. And if you're a Watford fan, please do add anything more to this about, I haven't got information about Watford in the Championship. So I've gone for top flight Pedro, now back in the top flight. So if his role particularly changed at all, he played much more advanced centre forward or midfield or wherever, do let me know, and do let us know in there, and add to the knowledge here. So this is Pedro last season with Watford, and then we can see here this is mainly on the left, but he did play on the right. So he occupied mainly the Matoma role. So that presents the question, could Matoma be rested perhaps in a league game before Europe or in a European game before the league? This presents an option. So suddenly there is an option to replace Matoma because Pedro is used to playing there and in that area. But he goes much more into the penalty box in the centre and than Matoma did, whereas Matoma sort of glides around. So it could be a bit more of a sort of a centre forwards stroke winger role there. He is over on the left hand side as well, so on the right hand side. So he has mainly on the left. So Solly March might have some competition here, but there is also some green blobs of heat in the middle. Could be that it's the Enciso role or what was the McAllister role that he occupies. So there's so much up in the air at the moment, but these are sort of where we are at with them. This is what we know, and as the season goes on, and hopefully this video and podcast will be listened to at during pre-season as it goes on, and more information from the friendlies can be added to that. But this is sort of what we're looking at. Now, pre-season, I was thinking, well, I might get to see some pre-season games. You know, Brighton usually play Worthing and Whitehawk or Eastbourne. For those that don't know, these are other clubs within Sussex and Brighton area. But no, they're off to America and they're playing other Premier League sides. And but there is a game at the Amex as well. So let's have a look at the friendlies. So to timestamp this, it's July the 18th. So we don't have a pre-season friendly period yet to look. So I know we've got information about West Ham and Brentford and Sheffield United and other teams that have started their pre-season. Not so for Brighton yet, but July the 23rd is when we start to realise. So we've got that date to look forward to. That is Brighton and Hove Albion versus Chelsea at the Lincoln Financial Field, Philadelphia. See, they're part of a tour, Premier League clubs in America, and this, like I was saying about Brighton being like first for all these stats or second for these stats in attacking stats, and the fact we're in the Europa League, it's almost like you have to. I almost can't believe this now, that Brighton on a tour of American stadiums with the likes of, say, Chelsea. So Brighton Hove Albion versus Chelsea, 23rd. July the 26th, Brighton Hove Albion versus Brentford at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium at Atlanta. So that gives us another opportunity. And then July the 29th, Brighton Hove Albion against Newcastle United at the Red Bull Arena, New Jersey. Finally, back home to the Amex, August the 6th, Brighton Hove Albion against Real Vallecano. I can't even pronounce it. Vallecano. Anyway, please urgently correct me. I really should have boned up on my Spanish pronunciation there. But anyway, home game, European opposition. That's going to put them in good stead for Europa League and to help them out there. So I'd like to have seen perhaps a bit more, but some of these, early friendlies against, the likes of Worthing or whoever, they probably would have seen some of the fringe players there. And I think these 4 fixtures here, I think is going to give us a really good indication of how they're going to set up when the season starts in game week 1 against Luton, who arguably are not as good as any of the sides they're playing in pre-season. So things we're looking out for, just to sort of recap. I mean, in defence, we're going to look. There'll be other content around the defence, but obviously we need to find out who's in goal. As Steele definitely got that goalkeeper number 1 jersey from Verbruggen, who they've just brought in, only 20 years old though. Who's going to play in defence? I'm seeing that Fiorenina's defender Igor has been recruited, or is going to be recruited. So I think there's definitely interest there, so that he could come in to the defence alongside Lewis Dunk, who's just signed a new contract. You imagine he's going to start. Webster, Van Heck also in there, and then Estupiñán you think would be nailed on the left there. But yeah, for the attack as well, what we're looking at. Who's going to start up front? Is it going to be Welbeck and then Ferguson or Undav? Because Undav did impress. He was top for the time he was on the pitch in terms of expected minutes, expected goal involvement. So these are the things we need to work out. Is like who is going to start, who's going to replace them, who's going to get sort of 60 minutes, who's going to get 30 minutes. Will Ferguson start now? Will Welbeck become the super sub? Where will Enciso play? Will he be number 10, which is what his heat map last season indicated, is where he plays most frequently. But will he be used to perhaps replace March or Matoma occasionally, or permanently, or will he play even up front? Will he be the replaced striker in a sort of false 9 maybe? It's hard to tell at the moment, but these matches here will tell us those. Pascal Gross, will he play? Where will he play? I would say he will play, but where will he play? And will he be on penalties? And Pedro as well. Will he be used in Europe as sub for Matoma? I mean, he cost, I think it was 30 million. So you're looking at the minutes there. The millions they've spent on him, and in terms of minutes, and you would imagine he's going to get a lot of game time. So he could be playing in that number 10 role. He could be playing as the striker as well. So maybe it'll be him that's starting. So there's so much up in the air, and then you've got a whole bunch of other sort of players, sort of fringe players that might get minutes as well. And it's hard to tell with Europe. As I was saying, I got a lot of this information from Fantasy Football Scouts members area. The last screen we got up on about looking at the friendlies, that is from the pre-season friendlies section. One of the things they do there for members is they've got a sort of a minutes tracker where they track all the minutes of the players, and that's where you can establish who's getting the most minutes, who's gradually, starting off playing the Boreham Woods or whoever, and gradually staying there when they're playing other sort of more notable opposition for a Premier League side. And when you're looking at that as well, that's going to be really crucial for Brighton. You want to see those minutes there and who is going to get them. And I really hope, I hope as a Brighton Hove Albion fan, whatever they do next season, is good for the club and they win. It could be that what is good for the club and in order for them to win might be poor for FPL, in that we might see a hell of a lot of substitutions around the 50, 60 minute mark, which is not what we want for FPL assets. We want, 80, 90 minutes if we can, and we want them to be on the pitch, especially with all those attacking stats I've been reading out of Brighton. Also, I've been looking at the comparison tool. So that's once again in the members area. I just showed the heat maps there, but there's a whole bunch of other stats as well in there, so you can compare players. For example, so it's got all the starts. So I was looking at say for example, how does Ferguson compare last season with Pedro in 2021 for Watford? Pedro was better than Ferguson was. He's got according to this, sort of a rating of 66% overall better than Ferguson. In terms of just looking through just a random shot. So, but then looking through it, expected goals, Ferguson had 0.3 each match. So he was expected to score a third of a goal each match he played, or each appearance, and it was just a 0.10 for Pedro. So what you're looking at there is, it could be a difference, but this once again is 2 years ago. But anyway, you can just play around with these things in there. Finally, I hope you enjoyed this content. I hope you enjoyed all the content that we do over pre-season to get you prepared. Do press that like button if you've liked it. Even if you haven't liked it, I always just say just press it anyway. It's just nice. But also do remember to subscribe as well to our channel, because we've got loads of stuff coming up from Gameweek 1 onwards. Those are regular features. I'll be back with Tom Freeman, the Fantasy Football Scouts Deputy Editor, to do Goals Imminent every Tuesday. I'm also going to be back with Neil every Friday for Team News. He's the editor of Fantasy Football Scout, and that is invaluable. If I wasn't on that show, I'd just be watching anyway. But I can't watch it because I'm on it, but I'm sort of hearing Neil as he's talking. And on that anyway, and we've got Scoutcast back, loads of other videos, loads of videos pre-season to keep you going. All of these become podcasts as well, so we've got that for you, and of course the members area, there's offers there. Do have a look at that. You've got the Rate My Team tool, lots and lots to keep you going. Exciting season. A lot of people saying the teams are the same, but I think we might be seeing maybe some different Brighton players. Let's hope. But in the meantime, it's been great to spend some time to chat about my team. I'm full of excitement for the season as a Brighton fan and as an FPL player as well. So let's hope they do well. Thanks a lot for your time. Until next time, see you soon and good luck.